Good morning, everyone. Good wintry morning, right? It's cold. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I hope you guys all had a really fantastic weekend. For a second there, I almost forgot that it was Monday, believe it or not. It's been a crazy couple days with all of this winter weather. Good morning, Dottie. Good morning, Allison. I do have power, but it's interesting that a lot of people just to the south of me do not have power. It was a strange storm. It had very definitive lines of snow, or people who had a mix of sleet and snow, people who had just freezing rain with a little bit of sleet mixed in. And hopefully, all of you also have power. Hopefully, all of you have made it through the weekend well. It was a pretty crazy winter storm. It's still ongoing. It's supposed to go through, I think, noon today. I think where I'm at, our accumulation so far looked to be about 8 to 9 inches. Now, I didn't go out and look too well today. I know we had some snow overnight, but last night before I went to bed, it was about 8 to 9 inches. We had a kind of a mix of snow, sleet, no freezing rain, but the snow was very heavy. At one point, I had to go out last night as much as I didn't want to. I have a chicken run. The way my chicken setup is I only have six hens, not a big flock by any means, and so they have a coop that is inside of the run, and so therefore my winter setup for my chickens is that I go in and I make sure the little coop that they sleep in is very well covered itself. So that's just some extra protection. And I know some people say don't do it, but I do have a heated lamp in the run. Now then the larger run, I think it's like 13 feet by 20 feet. And that of course is over that smaller coop. So I cover the bigger run also in plastic. I have double layer tarps over the top of it. But when the snow comes down on top of the tarps, it can be very heavy. And when I went in there yesterday to feed them, make sure they were good and warm, the snow of course was weighing down on those tarps. So I had to clean it off, and it was a good probably 6 to 7 inches of snow that had accumulated on top of those tarps. So I know we got it pretty good. And thankfully, if you do have chickens or other animals outside, if you cover your run really well in plastic and tarps, you can. The main point, of course, is to keep the wind out, to keep the moisture out. And so my chickens seem pretty happy. They do their thing. They didn't seem too bothered by any of the winter weather, and their coop is extremely warm, and they didn't even go in there. They were out in the run where it was a little bit cooler, but they were shaded, of course, from the wind and snow. Now, where the real problem comes in is when all of this snow melts. There were snow drifts up against the plastic coating around the coop that were 3 and 4 feet high in certain spots. So that's going to be a big old mess when it clears out. Allison, prayers for Ashley Babbitt and her family, justice for Ashley. You got that right, Allison. Dottie, my VA house on the North Carolina or Virginia house on the North Carolina border got hammered with snow. And let's see, you were just below the store nine. Well, hopefully, Dottie, obviously, hopefully you have power and all is well. Hopefully, everyone has power today. Good morning, Jay Van Brown. Hope you're having a fantastic day. But yeah, I'll tell you what, right now, I am freezing. Seriously freezing. And I not only have the furnace on, but I kicked it up a couple notches before I came on the show. But I also have a little space heater, right not too far from me. Well, I mean, it's probably about 15 feet, from where I'm standing right now. But I'll tell you, it's cold. I do not like cold weather. And it's really a shame, all the accidents. And I know people have to get out. It's not my place or my business to tell people don't get out and drive. Everybody's, mostly adults. You can get out and do what you want to do. But when you do get out and drive unnecessarily, then all that does, it just puts more restraint, more, it causes more problems for first responders, which we certainly don't need. There was a lot of near misses with first responders yesterday out trying to clear accidents, help people who were stranded, who were nearly getting hit by vehicles themselves. Good morning, Ryan. Last I heard, I didn't look at the updated numbers today. I haven't seen any figures on Illinois, but in Missouri, I saw there were, I don't know, like 2,500 emergency calls, about 300 accidents with injuries, I believe it was, and one fatality. And it's unfortunate. I don't think the numbers have to be that high. I think too many people get out on the road unnecessarily. I did not. I will not be out on the road today, but that's only because I don't have to work. If I had to work today, I would also be one of those people out on the roads. What can you do? Good morning, Beatrice. Good to see you. Good morning, Lori and Ryan. How was your commute this morning? Yeah, I didn't have to drive, Ryan, thankfully. My commute will be tomorrow, and it'll be about 2 hours long. Which brings me to, if my work tomorrow isn't canceled, I will not have a show tomorrow. I definitely will not have a show on Wednesday. Thursday is questionable. It's going to be a really rough week. I have a very busy work week, and I'm going to talk to Colonel Joe Adams, see what we can get figured out with him this week. Wednesday, I literally work 18 hours on Wednesdays. I will not be around at all. But I do hope maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, even if I can't do a show in the morning, hopefully maybe I can do one in the afternoon because I'm only going to be gone in the morning. I'll be back in the afternoon because there's a lot to talk about this week. Good morning, Linda. There's a lot to talk about this week. There's a lot to talk about today. Obviously, besides weather. And I do worry about people in this weather. A lot of folks to my south who receive mostly freezing rain and sleet, there's thousands of power outages. And a lot of these areas, they don't have warming centers. And I hope people were prepared. We still have snow coming in my direction. I don't expect myself to have a power outage just because snow doesn't typically take out the power. It's usually freezing rain and sometimes sleet, but mostly just freezing rain. And like I said back last week, back in 2007, I did lose power for, I don't know, 13 days, something 12, 13 days, something 14 days, something along those lines, because we had that freezing rain and it just coated the trees and coated the power lines and everything was snapping. And that's exactly what's happened just south of me here, not only in Illinois, but also in Missouri. And that's a really tough situation for a lot of people because not only do you have the damage from all the fallen trees, but you have your linemen coming out from your Ameren or whatever type of service you have in your area, and they have to remove those trees before they can restore the power. And frozen trees are not easy to remove. So it's, certainly we need to offer a lot of prayer for those people and help for them if we can. Jay says, let's see here, Jay Van Brown. I have a space heater, works real good. I turn it off when I leave my house. I have a space heater. I have a furnace here, but I also have a space heater because I like it to be extra warm on me. So I kind of try to stay as warm as I possibly can. Good morning, Jesse Girl Spain. And let's see, in Illinois Northern, we have had nothing. Storm missed us. Yeah, it kind of had that fine line. Like I'm probably, if you thought about it in blocks, a term of city blocks, I'm in a rural area, but I would say I'm probably about 3, 4 blocks from Highway 70, and the storm came right down Highway 70. Many portions of Highway 70 closed, by the way, all the way through from Kansas, all the way through into Indiana. So that storm continues to march its way, march its way east and affecting more people. I really got to say thanks to all of the truck drivers and first responders and other emergency type workers, people out working, for the state and the city who are out working and plowing and salting, and they have no choice. They've got to get out into this weather. Good morning, Jeanette. Have you seen the video of weird hair? Yes, I'm going to talk about that, Jeanette, about the weird hair growing since the fog. I've got that on my agenda. I shared a video of that on Facebook today. Allison, do not use extension cords with space heaters. You're right, Allison. That can cause a big fire, and I have not done that. And please don't do that. Good morning, Sherry, and good morning, Annette. And there's a lot going on. I also, Annette, hope everyone is safe and hope everyone is warm. And there is a lot to talk about today, but one more thing in regards to the cold weather. It's not over yet, by the way. I do hope they have the roads cleared by tomorrow, at least somewhat, when I have to get up in the morning and make my nearly 2-hour trek into St. Louis County. I work in South County tomorrow. And because I hate driving in the snow. And, I'm from Chicago. I grew up in the Chicago area. And there, it's totally different. It snows, in the beginning of winter, and then it just keeps snowing. Snow piles on top of snow, most of the time. And you're used to driving on it. The schools don't close, stores don't close. Everybody goes on about their business like absolutely nothing has happened because it's so normal there. But the problem I have found in the St. Louis area, I trust my ability to drive in the snow. Now, the difference is when I lived in Chicago, I learned to drive, in the Chicago area before I moved to St. Louis. And the difference is that you don't have a lot of freezing rain and sleet there. I don't recall a lot of times driving, on frozen roads. They were cold and snowy roads, but not a lot of sheets of ice or sleet, that type of thing. But the problem is here in the St. Louis area, I have found that people just don't know how to drive on snow. People don't drive for the weather conditions. People are flying down the road like it's an ordinary day. And I don't care what kind of vehicle you have. I have a Rubicon. My son has a Rubicon. But the difference is that when it's icy and it's a sheet of ice, it doesn't matter what you're driving. Doesn't matter. I have completely slid down an entire hill one time in my Jeep. So it doesn't matter. Don't think just because you have a big truck or a four-wheel drive vehicle that you can drive on the ice, because trust me, it doesn't make a difference. But please, if you don't have to get out, just don't. It's not worth it. By the way, I stayed home yesterday. I didn't go out at all this entire weekend, other than to, run to the grocery store. And, I hope this is a wake up call. We're going to talk about this later in the show. A 2-day storm, really kind of more of a 1.5 day storm. What did it do? It completely inundated our grocery stores. And good luck trying to find a heater in some areas. I went and bought one of those propane Mr. Heater deals just in case I lost power, which thankfully I haven't as of yet. But I'll tell you, it goes to show we're not prepared for an emergency. We are not prepared for an emergency. In some stores, more prepared than others. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we start talking about terrorism, because I think we're going to have a lot going on in 2025. It's going to be the year of terror. And we're going to have to make sure that we are prepared. You have to make sure you're prepared. There's a lot of different scenarios to prepare for. And terror, of course, is one of those scenarios. So we're going to get into a little more about preparedness in the grocery stores here in just a little bit. But first off, one of the things that I wanted to go over was St. Louis City. Our lovely mayor of St. Louis City, Tashara Jones, for whatever reason, didn't open warming centers during the day. Here we have a lot of people with power outages, a serious homelessness problem, of course, in the city of St. Louis. And these people had nowhere to go to warm up out of this crazy winter storm during the day. Now, eventually, yesterday, they did open the warming centers late into the late afternoon. Now, why wouldn't they have these warming centers open ahead of time? They claimed they couldn't open them because they didn't want the workers to have to get out and drive in this mess either. Okay, well, you know what? In all prior administration, mayoral offices in the city of St. Louis, they always had warming centers during the day in this type of weather, because it's a life or death situation. We have a lot less resources than what we used to have back when at least Larry Rice had his center. And I'm not one of those people who's standing here. You can't look at me and say, "Oh, it's easy for you to say," because guess what? I used to volunteer at those centers. I volunteered at Larry Rice's KNLEC. I lived right down the road from it at the time, down on Locust, and I volunteered on holidays. I volunteered on snowy, cold days. So I understand what it takes to have to get up and go in when you don't really even want to get out yourself, but you do it for the better good of other people. And we don't have KNLEC there anymore. We don't have a lot of options for people. And out in certain counties and certain rural areas, there are no options. There are no options. So we've got to do better taking care of our people. We have to do better. And I don't know what that better is. And again, there's no profitability in the homeless population. So I don't see it being better. But, unfortunately, we have these types of storm systems that come through, and it results in deaths because people have nowhere to go. They have no way to get out of the cold weather. Some of them don't want to. Some people do not want to get out of the cold weather. And, that's on them. You cannot force someone, unfortunately. So that's something I had to throw that in there because I'm so disappointed with Tashara Jones and her leadership over St. Louis City. In the past, they had warming buses. People could come and sit on a warming bus for a couple hours and get out of the cold, rotate people in and out, warming centers during the day. But right now, they only have a couple warming centers at night, and they force people out around 5 a.m. in the morning. And those people are out in this bitter cold and snow and ice, and they just have to fend for themselves. So it's highly unfortunate. And Allison, it just shows how people are not prepared. People are not prepared at all, not at all, including myself. I don't have stockpiles. I know I have a natural spring here at the property and a well, but I'm not necessarily prepared either. I didn't have 10 cases of water, which I think is probably what people really need. And Tammy Jerry Hoover, good morning to you. And you hope the certification goes well today. I think it will. I expect it to. And let's see, Jay Van Brown, packed snow is not that bad to drive on, but ice is a no. You got that right. And there is so much ice on the roads. And let's see, you're snowing again here and the Indiana Illinois border, 22 miles south of I-70. Yeah, if you're 22 miles south of I-70, you're probably getting it pretty darn bad. Sherry says we got 14 inches of snow in Hawk Point. Thank the Lord for our Jeep. Yeah, if you don't have a four-wheel drive in this kind of weather, it is tough. It's tough. I remember back in, gosh, when I was really young, I had back in the day of the Camaros in the late 80s. I remember trying to drive in this kind of weather in that old Camaro. I mean, it was a new Camaro, at the time, but man, it was tough. Not every car is meant to be on these crazy mornings. Good morning, Phyllis. So some of the things I want to get in today, I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm going to talk about the hair fog that somebody just brought up. Joe, Colonel Adams, a Washington Guard, is on standby to assist any Guard member if they need assistance. And Colonel Adams, I'm going to be talking about Colonel Adams today in the Washington Guard, because I'm telling you, we're heading into a tough year. I'm not going to talk about terrorism yet, but I am going to talk about it this morning. And preparedness is going to be key in 2025. Not only preparedness, but safety in numbers. You're going to have a plan of action, and you can't be the lone wolf in this plan. You really can't. So I'm hoping Colonel Adams wants to expand. I know he can't and doesn't want to. It's a lot of work, but I don't live in Franklin County where Colonel Adams is, and of course the Washington Guard. And I do worry, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some plans. And I just want to kind of, good morning, Phyllis. I just want to kind of jump into some things this morning. One is there's a lot of videos out there about hair fog. Have you seen this? A lot of people are claiming, but it seems isolated to cat food. And they're claiming that they were in areas of heavy fog. Remember this weird fog that's been coming through? And the fog has these weird, it's like flakes of something coming down that looks like ash. And now these people are claiming that their cat food that they have out for their cats is growing hair. They said it looks exactly like people hair. Now I'm wondering if it's not some kind of a fungus or a mold. Good morning, Patty, or something along those lines. But it seems to only be affecting cat food as of now, the videos I've seen. But it is very strange. It is very strange. Now, I have never left a can of cat food outside, and this is strictly, cans of cat food. So I can't attest to this myself. I haven't had the weird fog in my area, but there's so much going on right now that we just can't trust. And we know that not only our government, I hate to say it, I don't trust our government. I don't trust other governments either. And so what's happening with this weird fog? Is it bringing in disease? Is it bringing in, molds or fungus or something else? What in the world is happening? But if you've seen these videos of this fog, it doesn't appear normal. But it's also not the first time. Over the years, people have periodically reported this weird fog that had what seemed like ash. They would show videos of ash, just coming out of nowhere. And you have to ask, what is it? Is it space debris, something coming from space? Is it something coming from, a foreign adversary? Are they spraying things out of drones? Where is it coming from? And the problem is we don't have answers because no one will address it. People will say, oh, that's just conspiracy theory. You're not going to find any government entity to address this weird fog, to talk about it, to investigate it. They're not going to do a darn thing. They're just going to tell you you're crazy. Now, I have not personally experienced the fog, but I've talked to a couple people who have. and the videos of it are pretty interesting. And let's see here. Patty says, when they don't tell us what's going on, we have to speculate. You're right. All we can do is speculate. And we're doing a lot of speculating. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk about Sean Ryan and his show. We're going to talk about Matthew I say Livelsberger, they say Livelsberger. I'm guessing it is Livelsberger. And we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to show a little video to you. We're going to talk about George Soros, Hillary Clinton, some other folks getting the presidential free Medal of Freedom, which is just a travesty to this country. And we're going to talk about whether or not Donald Trump can rescind that. Of course, the certification taking place today, big day. I don't expect anything to jump in the way of that because there's too many other things going on. We're going to talk about 2025, the year of terror, because that's exactly what it's going to be. And we're going to talk about why, how, what you can expect, what you can do. When we do talk to Colonel Joe Adams this week, we're going to talk about that, hopefully a little bit more. And sorry, guys, I have my phone still on, so I'm going to pause that. And so we're going to get into that. I'm going to give Colonel Adams a call today because I have to work. I work in anti-piracy for anyone who doesn't know. And I have to be at different movie theaters to make sure people are not pirating movies. And Wednesday is a really big day for me. I have to work from 7 a.m. till I probably won't get home. Well, I'll probably have to leave my house around 6 a.m. I won't get home till around midnight. So it's going to be a very long day, but we're going to talk to him and try to figure out another day and get another plan together. Now that could change because because of the weather, they could end up canceling, and we'll see how that works out. Same for tomorrow. I have to work tomorrow morning. I have to work Thursday morning. If I have to, for anyone that didn't hear what I stated earlier, I will try to do a show tomorrow afternoon and Thursday afternoon if I'm not available in the morning. It's a podcast. We can do whatever we want. We can have a show in the morning. We can have a show in the afternoon. We can have one at midnight. We can do whatever we want to do. Jesse's Girl Spain says, I had weird snow pellets start when I was on a run. My nose started to run, and the next day my throat was weirdly sore. This was after the fog. A lot of people reporting they're having a lot of issues after the fog. A lot of people reporting weirdness with the snow. Now, my snow looks like regular snow. I know somebody on Facebook had a video of them using a blowtorch on their snow, and they held it there for, gosh, 20, 30 minutes, and it never melted. I'm going to try that later today. By the way, I also have a torch hooked to a propane tank, and I'm going to go out and try it on my own snow, and gosh knows I have plenty of snow. And let's see, Jay Van Brown, I've had a slight headache the last 2 days. Me too. These are happening more frequently. I wonder if there's something in the air. I'm on blood pressure meds, but come on, it's conspiracy theorist in me. There is something more going on. What it is, I don't know. I've had a headache myself for 3 or 4 days now, and I don't know, what it's related to. I've not had weird fog in my area. My snow, looks pretty normal. But, there's a lot going on from 5G to, microwaves traveling through the air. There's a lot of different weapons the enemy has, and we're going to talk about that later, what's going on, the chemicals. We have the mad scientist, Billy Gates playing all sorts of games with us. There's a lot of different things that could go on. And whoever said it earlier about we're left, Patty, it was Patty, we're left to speculate. We are left to speculate. No one will tell us anything. All we can do is talk about it and speculate. Good morning, Joe Fry, the guitar guy. And let's see here. Let's see. Do be careful driving out there. You got that right, Joe. Do be careful driving because I'll tell you the weather's crazy. I'll say I'm back on YouTube. By the way, I was grounded for several days for talking about the C word and the I word, and we talked on Friday about the crazy new viruses going around over in China, and one in particular, that HMPV. I think it was some kind of human something pneumonia new. I don't have it written down. Pneumonia virus, something around along those lines. What they're saying is really taking over in China, as well as here in the United States. We have tularemia making a comeback. We'll talk about that. How do these things, pop into circulation again? Tularemia, who gets that? That'd be like, oh, we're having a cholera. Is that, am I saying that right? Outbreak, like in the old days. You know what? Cholera, you just never know. Paula, good morning, Paula. Every time they do chemtrails here in Las Vegas, I get really bad headaches. Me too. And I really do wonder about that because I know I posted some photos on my social media about exactly that. I just happened to be looking out. I was in the sunroom and looked out these windows and I could see all of this was before the winter storm came through. And I live in a rural area. I don't see a lot of chemtrails out here. As a matter of fact, these might be the first. And they were just crisscrossing all over the sky. And I thought, okay, well, that's the weather manipulators bringing in the winter weather because it just wasn't happening fast enough for them. We were having too many beautiful days in unseasonably warm weather for the winter. So they had to bring in the snow. And you can call me crazy, conspiracy. I truly don't care. I absolutely 100% wholeheartedly believe that this winter storm, and I'm not saying it wasn't already a little bit of a cold front coming through that would have brought some weather with it. When I see all of these crisscrosses across the sky ahead of any type of major storm system, then I know the government is behind it. Weather manipulation is behind it. I'm not going to say it wouldn't have snowed a little bit anyway, but I know that we have the mad scientist out there, Bill Gates, and all of his funding of all of this different stuff from mosquitoes giving immunizations to people, which is a brilliant idea, by the way, but also kind of a mad scientist way of doing things. And we know he's trying to cover up the sun and with sodium bicarbonate. And that makes me think this fog is all part of that same system because I saw a photo of someone's swimming pool and it showed all of this foam. And I thought, man, that looks familiar. I've seen something like this before. And so I went and I looked it up. And they said that sodium bicarbonate, which is like baking soda, it's also the same type of chemicals you see in a fire hydrant. And when you spray a fire hydrant, it's dry ingredients that mix with the air and then it turns into something different, mixes. And so therefore I'm thinking, this to me looks like what is inside of a fire extinguisher. And if you mix it with water or on top of a pool, it looks exactly like that. And of course, that's also some of the same ingredients they use to block the sun in these chemtrails. So I really think it's all just a giant science experiment, is what it is. We're all just part of that experiment. And good, let's see. Patty says I had to purchase Sudafed from behind the counter at CVS. I had to show my license and sign a form. Everything needed to make a B treated the same way. Yeah, I used to take Sudafed because I have terrible sinuses. I had sinus surgery years ago, and Sudafed is a no more for me because I am not putting my name down on any kind of government form. Next thing you know, they're going to be like, "Oh, you're making meth. You're buying Sudafed." Nope, not me. And Joe says, I'm thinking most different viruses going around is just the flu. Everything's probably literally the flu or a cold. And they're just calling it whatever they want because we have no way to know the difference. And they don't even care if we did know. And let's see, Dottie says, so few Carolina blue skies days. Back when I was a kid, the sky was beautiful and blue. And remember, we had those big, fluffy cumulus clouds that would float around, and it was absolutely beautiful. You don't see a lot of that these days. I see very few beautiful blue sky days until recently. And of course, they had to come through with the magic fog and the chemtrails to take away those beautiful blue sky days for us. Good morning, Cindy. And also remember when, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, I would be out playing in the street and you'd see you'd all the big fluffy white clouds and you'd see one dark cloud. And that cloud, I remember one time playing on my grandma's street and the cloud came through and under it was a big sheet of rain. And that cloud rained, we saw the rain coming, the rain went over us and then just kept on going and then it got sunny again. I never see that anymore, very rarely. Things are different and it's because they're messing with the weather. Let's see, Jay Van Brown, I don't think we live too far apart. You see chemtrails over here all the time. You are towards Illinois and Kentucky. Yeah, and it could be that I'm just not looking. I'm busy and working back in my little sheltered area, so I might just not see it. I'm not home that much either because I'm always working. I probably work more than I think most of the population. But anyway, there are chemtrails out there. They are messing with our weather. There is HARP. There is CERN. There is weather manipulation. And I think that when we start talking about terrorism here shortly, those are some of the things we have to talk about because terrorism isn't necessarily suicide bombers. It can be a lot of different things, and it will be suicide bombers, but it can be a lot of different things. So, so that's something we're definitely going to get in today. Something I want to talk about first, all of you guys probably know at this point who Sean Ryan is. And he is a podcaster. I'm not going to get into his credentials because quite honestly, I don't know them. I have never heard of Sean Ryan up until about 3 days ago. I've seen a couple of his podcasts. I've even played a couple of his little clips from his interview, but I really wasn't 100% sure he was who he was. I never really looked into his background too much. And, he is a former military person. He's certainly very talented. I believe he was a Navy SEAL. I have a lot of respect for the guy. I, love some of the interviews he's done. Now that I've seen his show a couple of times, I really like his show. I like him as a person. I have nothing bad to say about the guy. And as many of his show, the Sean Ryan, I believe it's called the Sean Ryan Show. A couple days ago last week, he came out. We had the terror attack in New Orleans, which is a lot of twists and turns with that too. I don't know if you guys heard, but the DA of New Orleans committed suicide this weekend, which is very strange. And is it related? Is it not related? I don't know. And I'm not going to talk about it because I just don't know. But when Sean Ryan came out, talking about Matt Livelsberger, of course, Matt Livelsberger being the person who was in the Cybertruck in Las Vegas, he had received an email from Livelsberger, and I read that email to you last week where it talked about, and I've got another one to read today, where it talked about what he and what Matt was involved in, that people were following him, that the drones are Chinese drones, and that we have a lot to worry about. They're anti-gravity drones, and a lot of different things. And of course, he had the Cybertruck that he parked in front of the Trump International Hotel that blew up, and with fireworks and accelerant, and it was a pretty crazy situation. And Patty says, we still don't know the info on the Vegas country concert shooter. We don't, and we'll never know. And Peggy says, did you see the X Spaces last night? I did see it, Peggy, and I'm definitely going to talk about that. Good morning, Kim. And so, I'm definitely going to talk about, so Sean Ryan last week had the big show. He was with a guy named Shoemake, and they talked about Matthew Livelsberger and the Cybertruck, and they talked about this email that he received about it. And of course, it sent him into a panic, like, oh my gosh, he didn't know Matt Livelsberger. He'd never talked to him before, didn't even know who he was. But yet he received this email. Then it turns out many people received emails from Matt Livelsberger, prior to this explosion. And I've read a lot of the emails. They're all very different. In fact, there was a person on the X Space last night who said he doesn't even know if they're written by the same person. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of people talking about this case, that it's not really Matt Livelsberger that was in that Cybertruck. We talked about this quite a bit on Friday, so I won't go into all of those details again, but there's a lot of people who believe it wasn't him for a lot of different reasons. They believe it wasn't him. And I said last Friday, and my mind hasn't really changed much, except for that I'm more convinced that it was Matt Livelsberger in that Cybertruck. And I said on Friday, I'm 80% that it was him in the truck, that he has suffered some type of mental break, PTSD, and it was him in the Cybertruck. And he did, in fact, commit suicide by, blowing that Cybertruck up to prove a point, to get a message across. And at that time, I was kind of 80% that it was him, 20% it was a covered up. Today, I'm probably 90% it was him, 10% that there was some type of cover up. And I feel like watching, Sean Ryan's interview last night even solidified that more for me. And if you're familiar with what happened prior to Sean Ryan's interview last night, the podcast last night, a lot of people were speculating, and going over the differences and different things that had happened that made it seem like Matt Livelsberger was truly still alive. That he originally said he was heading for Mexico, didn't know if he would make it there. Then the next thing you know, he's in Las Vegas. It's like, what's he doing in Las Vegas? He said people were following him because he knew all of this information about these anti-gravity drones and what was going on with China, a lot of other different things that were, some things that had taken place in drone attacks in Afghanistan, and I think it was 2019, and different things like that. And the way I looked at it at the time, to me, everything made sense to me, that it was him that actually had some type of mental break, ended up, sending out these emails, blowing himself up in the Cybertruck. The only thing that didn't make sense to me was that there were a few minutes where he was not on video. And so his timeline, he's from Colorado. He drove the Cybertruck from Colorado. Now, we still do not know, or at least I haven't heard, who rented the Cybertruck. Investigators said, well, we know who rented the Cybertruck, but we're not going to get into that publicly. So that tells me it was not Matt Livelsberger who rented that Cybertruck. Who it was at this point, we don't know. that could be a big deal, it may not be a big deal. But we know he left Colorado Springs. We know that Elon Musk went and looked at the footage, and he saw Matt Livelsberger driving that Cybertruck to Las Vegas. I guess when you have a Cybertruck, there's a lot of recording that takes place apparently in a Tesla. So, good morning, Elizabeth. So, you may or may not want to drive a Tesla. Allison said, no evidence of gunfire in that vehicle. And I'm going to show that to you, Allison, here in just a moment. And that is also one of the sticking points to me. But Elon Musk saw him stop and charge the Cybertruck all the way from Colorado Springs into Las Vegas. They have footage, which they have not released, by the way, at least not largely. They've released little tiny bits and clips of what we assume is Matt Livelsberger driving that Cybertruck through Las Vegas. He goes to the Trump Hotel, he drives around, leaves, goes up and down. If you've been to Las Vegas and you know where the Trump International Hotel is, I've stayed there before. It's the only reason why I'm familiar with it. You can drive down that old part of the strip. And so apparently he's seen driving all up and down that strip, seemingly looking like he's trying to find a place to go. Well, he does end up finding a parking lot where, of course, there's no surveillance. And that's the only part that seems strange to me. There's no surveillance in the area he actually does stop in. So there are a few minutes of time where we have no idea what happened. He pulled into this parking lot, not seen again on surveillance, until he pulls back into the Trump International Hotel. Parks 17 seconds later, after he pulls in, of course, the Cybertruck explodes. So there is a lot of reasonable information that says that in those 15 minutes, we know that or we're told by investigators, it absolutely was him driving around Las Vegas. They see him, they know it's him. Then he goes into the parking lot. We don't see him for a few minutes. There's a reasonable reason to believe that possibly somebody else was put into the car by him, by someone else. We don't know. Did some operatives grab him, throw somebody else in the car? We don't know. I don't think so. I think that Matt pulled over. I think he got his detonation device ready. He got everything in place. Might have sent out a couple of these messages because he messaged a lot of people prior to this, including right up to the minute. So I think that that's my personal thoughts, that he just got everything ready, got back onto the road, went straight to the Trump Hotel, and then detonated. And there's a lot of people with a lot of different opinions on this, and let's see here. Good morning, Ruth. And a lot of people are saying, well, it can't be him because A, he had his documents. Gee, how can you have a fire and his documents are fine? Well, they did cover this a little bit on the Sean Ryan podcast last night. They didn't cover what I think. I believe that if he indeed did do this to get attention, of course he wanted people to know who he was. A lot of people in combat want to be identified, and they spray their identification with a flame retardant spray. Because if you spray, let's say your driver's license, or you have a piece of paper with this flame retardant spray, it will not catch on fire. You can even light it with a blowtorch. And so that's a possibility. Now, what they talked about on Spaces last night was that, well, if it was held in, we don't know where it was. If it was in his back pocket, pressed up against the seat based on the location, that also could mean why it didn't burn. Maybe it didn't have direct contact with fire. So there's a lot of different ways that that document remained intact. That's not something necessarily nefarious. So those are something, good morning, Mary, to throw out there. And, if you watch the Spaces podcast last night, mostly what that was about was Sean Ryan defending himself, because a lot of people have said, oh, he's making it up. He's just trying to get views. And this is a big nothing. And, he should have never talked about it, blah, 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 blah. He's making it all up. And I don't believe that for 1 minute. I would have done the same thing. If I would have been Sean Ryan and Matt had sent that email to me, I would have had a show and talked about it also. I would have been like, gosh, look at this. This is all wild and crazy. What a cover up, all of this stuff. But then I think what happened is that Sean Ryan must have gotten all of these different people together, people who were different types of special operations, people who were experts in different fields. And they all kind of came to the conclusion that none of this, it probably really was Matt Livelsberg in the vehicle, and that he was really suffering from some type of PTSD or something along those lines. So if you watch the Spaces interview, or I keep calling it interview because he was talking to these different people, but a podcast, that seems to be the conclusion that they came up with. And hopefully, Sean Ryan's his reputation isn't tarnished. He did what anyone would do. First of all, he did turn the information into the FBI, which is good, which is what he needed to do. He did cover it on his podcast. I would have done the exact same thing. I don't think for 1 minute that he made any of it up. I think he really did receive the email. I think he had explored every avenue trying to figure out, is there a cover up? Did this really happen? And a lot of people are still going to always believe that that was not Matt in that Cybertruck. I believe it absolutely was him in that Cybertruck. And contrary to what a lot of people are hearing, in different social media platforms, then it depends on how much you trust the Las Vegas Police Department. Now, I personally do trust the Las Vegas Police Department, and the reason why, a girl I went to high school with, her husband works there. B, there's a lot of information that the Las Vegas Police Department has given us that we wouldn't otherwise know. They told us information about the Las Vegas shooter, things that they told people off record that went against the narrative that the FBI and other agencies were telling us. Remember when Joe Biden was in Las Vegas and he had that medical emergency, and his administration said, "Oh, it's nothing. He just tested for COVID. Tested positive for COVID. Everything's fine." But the Las Vegas Police Department, a couple of those officers spoke out and they said, "No, we had a 911 call that told us that he had a possible, serious stroke, and we had to clear the roads and do what we could to get him back on his plane so they could get him to emergency medical care. That originally he was going to go to a hospital in Las Vegas, and they decided to get him on the plane, and get him somewhere else." So I think they've been very forthright in giving the public information that we wouldn't otherwise already have. So the Las Vegas Police Department, their investigators are telling us that this is Matt Livelsberger, that they have confirmed that the tattoos do belong to him. They released photos of the tattoos, which I have not seen. And they said, contrary to what people are saying, the DNA actually does match. And they're also saying that, let me think here. I know I've got all kinds of notes here. I don't know if I'll be able to sort through them to find all the information, but they said that the DNA does match. They found two phones at the scene which do match the type of phone he was using. They do have his information on these phones. They claim that everything points to it being him. It looks like him from what they could tell. The dental records match, the DNA matches, the tattoos match. And I'm going to show you something, a little bit graphic so you can see. And Allison says a Cybertruck can be moved by pin on phone, which is not self-driving mode. And that could be true, Allison. There's a lot of different things that people can do, especially when you get into some of these different experts. Now, Elon Musk has been very vocal about this case, and he has said, more than once that the Cybertruck never was in self-driving mode. It was always controlled by the operator, but that, how that goes. That doesn't mean that some foreign adversary or even somebody in our own government didn't figure out a way to hack that, where Elon Musk couldn't tell. We don't know. We do know that Elon Musk he does have control of the vehicle now, and he is trying to pull out the footage from inside the cab. Apparently, when you drive a Tesla, you're always being recorded, is what I'm getting out of this. That's not what he said, but that's what I'm getting out of this. And so he's trying to pull the footage from inside the cab of the Cybertruck so that we know what happened in those few moments when Matt was pulled off into some parking lot near the Sands Hotel. Now, it was not at the Sands Hotel, because people have said to me, well, if it was by the hotel, of course they have footage. It was not at the hotel. It was in a parking lot a little bit away from the hotel. Now, did he know? You could say, well, he knew ahead of time, that there was no camera there, that he couldn't be seen, and he met someone there. Or, I've even thought about that theory myself. But I think that he was driving up and down the strip looking for a place to pull over that looked like it wouldn't be on camera. And then he found a place that wouldn't. And he set up the detonation device. And it was probably what they call the dead man's trigger, where you're holding it. And then let's say he shoots himself. And then, of course, he's incapacitated. His hand lets go of the trigger. And then you have the detonation. Now, back to Allison, and what you were saying is when you go back and you look, and I hate to show this to you because it is graphic, but when you look at an up close view of the Cybertruck exploding, you don't see anything that looks like he fired a shot. You don't see any type of flash, like a muzzle flash. You don't really see him move a lot. So that part is also confusing to me. And that is the only hesitation I have. After breaking down all the facts, I can find an explanation for every single thing except for why you don't see a muzzle flash. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. And somebody else can probably break that down and tell you a lot more than I do why we don't see that. But I'm going to show you this video really quick. Then I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about the podcast, Sean Ryan's podcast from last night. So I apologize that this is graphic, but I'm going to show this to you here very quickly. And I took the sound off. So you can see that there. Now there's a lot of photos out. So you can see it's dark. No flash, no flash. And then you can see the explosion. And I'm sorry again for this being so graphic, but you can see a man sitting there in the seat who looks very much like Matt Livelsberger. It doesn't mean they couldn't put somebody in there that looked like him. But, again, that's a very graphic video. And there's a lot of photos out there that stills people took from that. And there's still some points out there that need some explaining. But overall, last night, listening to the Sean Ryan interview, listening to some of these experts talk, many of them Green Berets, many of them special operations, seem to come to the conclusion that, hey, yes, he sent out all of these emails. They broke it down, some of the points in what they called his manifesto that didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense. They said, for one, the attacks that he claimed were committed in Afghanistan, it's just not possible. And these were some of the people, Sean Ryan, had quite a few guests on, and these were the people who were in Afghanistan, people who were over, controlling the drones and that different type of thing. And he said, well, we didn't, the drones don't kill hundreds of people at a time, which is true. And I think most of us, even non-military folks, know that. Now we know that drones have been used by the United States and our different other countries for very much precision drone strikes. They can take out a tank, a group of soldiers or a group of people, but not like an entire city or anything. We don't typically see that happening. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but that's typically not what we're seeing. And these guys were the experts that he spoke to last night in the podcast, and they all say it just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. And they of course have to have legal components in every strike they make, and they did make some mistakes. I'm sure you guys remember when they struck that aid worker right after the situation at the Kabul airport, when we had our 13 troops that were killed in that attack, and they were trying to find the person who did that, the people responsible, and they ended up using a drone and striking a man who was in his vehicle, and they thought he was loading explosives, and it turned out to be he was an aid worker. He worked with our troops, and he was loading water bottles into his vehicle. So, there have been mistakes made. And Joe says Matt knew about the 2019 slaughter of civilians, but in Colonel Adams, and hopefully you'll talk about this when you do join us. And the people on the Sean Ryan show said it never happened. They said there were no slaughter of civilians. So, that drones aren't capable of doing that in the way that Matt said. Now, again, that's up to interpretation. If you go back to the Sean Ryan podcast, is it possible that these people are all worried about covering themselves, that they wish they hadn't talked about it, that they're worried now that they're going to be implicated in some way, and so they're saying that it never happened? That's certainly possible. I wasn't there. I definitely don't know. But that's what they were talking about on the podcast last night. Some of the other things they talked about was that his signal number changed after the detonation. They said that what they call the safety number changed. They said that can't happen. Well, what they determined is that he had two different phones. They believe he had an iPhone and an Android phone. Two phones were recovered by investigators. And they said that if you have one Signal account, but let's say you use that on multiple devices, they say each time you use it on a different device, it automatically changes this safety number. So I don't know. I don't use Signal. If that's true, I just don't know. But that is one way they're saying that it happened. And Jay Van Brown says drones could be used to release bad stuff in the atmosphere. Yes, it absolutely can, and probably is happening. It's probably happening to us. Now, they also stated in the show last night that Matt had a very basic understanding of drones. It wasn't the department he was working in. They said he was a Group 10, I believe they called it, Green Beret. They said he was very much involved in European type information, not in Middle East information. That he was on a chat group. I guess they had a chat group where they talked about drones and they were throwing theories out there, and somebody threw the theory out there that it could be the Chinese, that maybe the Chinese have a submarine stationed on the East Coast, and that's where these drones are coming from. They said he would have no knowledge of this. He didn't have access to these information systems, but he was part of that chat. But the interesting part is, to the side of conspiracy, is that that chat disappeared after he allegedly perished. The chat disappeared. It was completely gone. I personally, I'm not a military member. I personally don't think that China has anything to do with those drones. We've talked about this many times in the past. That's a theory that's been floating around from day one, along with Iran, that they have a submarine off the East Coast or a mothership, and that's where all these drones are coming from. But these drones are being seen all over the world. It's not exclusive to New Jersey or to the East Coast of the United States. They weren't traveling in a grid pattern as if they were trying to sniff out, nuclear weapons or anything else. They were just kind of all over the place, and they're still there. People are still reporting seeing these drones in different areas of New Jersey, New York. The difference is that social media is blocking it. The government's not talking about it. Some of the most outspoken mayors and governors who talked about these drones, they instantly just quit talking about it. It instantly became a non-issue. Somebody told them quit talking about it. Who? I don't know. I don't think it has anything to do with China or Iran. I don't know. Is it our own government? Is it some other entity? I have no idea. But what I do know is these drones are being seen all over the world. Right here in my own area, in St. Louis, everywhere. Literally, wherever you live, wherever you're listening from, I can guarantee you these drones have been seen in your area because they're all over the place. And that includes other countries. And there is no way that China has the drones or the manpower to have all of these drones all over the entire world. There's no way. Or with Iran. I don't have an answer for it, but it's not China, it's not Iran. And most of these folks on this podcast agreed that that's probably not the case. And they just kind of broke down his manifesto and talked about, you can go out and to X and listen to it again. And there was a guy on there, his name was I know his last name was Tardio. Sorry, I write all these notes down, but then I never go back and look at them. His name was Matt Tardio. Now, he claims that something that happened to him, which also lends to the conspiracy theory on this, and I'm only calling it conspiracy for just lack of another term. It's certainly not anything derogatory. And because if you're one of those people who believes that Matt Livelsberger did not die, that he's still alive, and that all of his manifesto was true, and that everything that he talked about is accurate, and he's trying to hide, I'm perfectly fine when I don't feel that way, but I support your reasoning for feeling that way. So Matt Tardio, he also another Green Beret, he claimed that someone has knowledge of Green Beret activities. Now, this is gets into a little bit of more on the conspiracy side of things. Again, conspiracy. I wish I had a better word for it. The disbelief that some people have for things, which is probably true, is what I'm trying to say. And what he stated is that he also belonged to this chat where they talked about the drones. He talked about how he also hires mercenaries just like Matt Livelsberger did for Ukraine. He was also somebody who hires mercenaries, as do, he said, a lot of Green Berets are involved in hiring mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. And he said that he had talked about hiring about somebody he knew going to the Kursk region to fight for Ukraine against Russia. And he said immediately, he was getting these messages. People were sending him. He doesn't think that it was Matt Livelsberger who was doing this, but somebody was sending him information about Green Berets, information that no one else would typically know. And he thought, well, that was really odd that he's getting these messages. And I can't recall if it was email or text, but he said right after this, his wife became very ill and she had some type of neurological disorder, something that kind of came on. It kind of reminded me, we talked last week about Havana syndrome And a lot of people out there talking about Havana syndrome right now and the fact that it can cause neurological damage to people, and we really don't know how. We think it's through microwave waves and that type of attack. So is that something that happened to this, what is his name again, Matt Tardio's wife? Or we don't know. So there could be something more going on. Hopefully I'm making sense to everyone, but whoever was contacting him, he said new information about Green Berets and their assignments and where they were, and this person was anonymous, and it really kind of, you could tell it scared him a little bit, especially with his wife becoming ill. And they went on to say basically that Matt Livelsberger just didn't have the knowledge of what he talked about. The the claims he made were not accurate. None of it was true. And they went on to say that, when you have an attack of PTSD, it can come on rather suddenly and you can spiral downward very quickly. One other person on that podcast, a guest, didn't want to get into the situation with Livelsberger's wife, but that, we all know, many of us have read the reports that she said he was suffering, from some type of mental situation, which is why they split up. So I think, in my opinion, we can conclude, for me anyway, that it certainly was Matt Livelsberger in that Cybertruck, and that a lot of his writings and his emails were unfortunately what happens when somebody has a mental break. And one of the other people, in the podcast talked about how they were giving these high levels. I thought they said Zofran. I'm not sure. I can't recall what I know it started with a Z. They said much higher when they were in the military than what the average person would ever be subscribed, the maximum a person would be subscribed, and kind of, I think, insinuated that when you're in the military, sometimes you're given different types of drugs at very high levels and it can cause you problems outside of your typical PTSD and other things that happened. And the conclusion of their Spaces X Spaces podcast, to me, appeared to them saying that, hey, we brought this out, we talked to the FBI, we held the podcast because we thought this information needed to be revealed to the public. We think we did the right thing. We wouldn't go back and do anything different. However, I think they concluded that Matt Livelsberger did in fact die in that Cybertruck, and he did suffer from PTSD and some type of a mental breakdown prior to, and that's why he was sending emails to so many different people, and I have one of those emails here because I know some of you absolutely do believe that it was a cover up. Now, I'm going to read part of this to you here. It says this is one of the emails he sent out. It wasn't the one that I read last week, and this one went to someone else and not to Sean Ryan. It said, "We are the United States of America, the best country people to ever exist. But right now, we are terminally ill and headed towards collapse. We are crumbling because of a lack of respect, morals, and respect for others. Greed and gluttony has consumed us. The top 1% decided long ago they weren't going to bring everyone else with them. You are cattle to them," which is true. We have stayed from family values. We have swayed from, he said strayed from family values and corrupted our minds. And I am a prime example of having all, but it never being enough. A lot of us are just sitting around waiting to die. No sunlight, no steps, no fresh air, no hope. Our children are addicted to screens by the age of 2. We are filling our bodies with processed foods. Our population is too far to join the military, yet we are facing war with China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran before 2030. We must take these actions if we are going to make it past the next few years in one piece. We must end the war in Ukraine with negotiated settlements. It is the only way. Focus on strength and winning. Masculinity is good, and men must be leaders. Strength is a deterrent, and fear is the product. Weeded out those in our government and military who do not idealize number 2. Now, I'm reading this verbatim exactly how he typed it. The income inequality in this country and cost of living is outrageous. The number of homeless, on our streets is embarrassing and disgusting. Have some pride and take care of this. Stop obsessing over diversity. We are diverse, and DEI is a cancer. Thankfully, we rejected the DEI candidate and will have a real president instead of a weekend at Bernie's. True. And he said, we must move on from the culture of weakness and self enrichment perpetuated by our senior military and political leaders. We are done with blatant corruption. Our soldiers are done fighting wars without states' clear objectives. And let's see here. He goes on to say this was not a terror attack, it was a wake up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Consider this the last sunset of 24, and my actions, the end of our sickness, a new chapter of health for our people. Rally around Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride the wave to the highest hedge money. And the Americans, let's see here, we are second to no one. And so, take it what you want. Take what you want out of that. I think everything he said was true. It doesn't sound like the rantings of a madman to me. I don't know Matt. I don't know what he was going through. I don't know him personally. Of course, most of the people on this podcast didn't know about him personally, didn't know him personally, and they couldn't really attest to his personality. They had to go back and look at his wife's statements and that type of thing. So we're kind of left. And Colonel Adams says Iranian missiles. And, we've just got to look at it as if Matt Livelsberger, in fact, did take his life to get this message out to us, I think we need to respect that. We need to heed it. We need to spread his message. He's right. Everything he said is absolutely correct. It's all right. He's absolutely correct when it comes to the statement that I just read to you. Absolutely correct. I think many of us, of course, can agree. And if you listen to the X podcasts from last night with Sean Ryan, one of the, and I have to say that there were a lot of military folks on there, people with very high credentials. Some of them I could tell were with us, as far as being conservatives. A couple of them I wasn't so sure about. So you'll just have to go back and listen to yourself. And in the end, the only thing you can do is look at all of the facts, decipher it for yourself, and stick with what you believe. If you think it's a conspiracy and a cover up, and you think that something happened during those few minutes where Matt Livelsberger was exchanged, it wasn't really him in the truck, I completely respect your decision to feel that way. And I understand why you feel that way. I'm just saying, I personally do believe that it was him. I think we have to heed his message and respect it for what it is. He died to give us these messages. And whether he was in, having an episode of PTSD or, something else was going on, some people think it was mind control from the government or whatever it is you think. Either way, this man gave his life for us to hear his messages. So I think we have to talk about it. And I think that we have to talk about it, then we have to move on and do something about it. And that's kind of where we're heading now is what do we do? Even though some of the things Matt Livelsberger talked about, which was Iranian missiles, he talked about these anti-gravity drones, he talked about terror attacks, there was a lot of different things. He sent out probably over a dozen emails to various officials, various podcasters, different people out there. And if you look at all of these messages, what we can get from it, a lot of the stuff he said is true. Now, a lot of it may just be ideas in his mind, things he heard on this chat group, because again, some of the people that were in these chat groups with him said that in his 10th group of Green Beret, he just wouldn't have intimate knowledge of drones. He wouldn't have intimate knowledge of what's going on in the Middle East. He wouldn't know about civilians being killed outside of hearsay. It wouldn't have been part of his job to know these things, outside of talking to people. But we all know people do talk. And Colonel Adams, of course, when we do talk to him, he can fill us on a little bit more on some of those things, because there is certainly some things to talk about still. But now what we've got to talk about, and it's unfortunate that we have to talk about it, and I'm probably going to go over my time today, but that's okay, is terrorism. We are certainly looking at a year of terrorism, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of talk right now, and it's not just made up. If you're on a Telegram, there's a Telegram page you can look at. It's called ISIS Watch. And what that page does, it does nothing but tell you how many bots they've stopped who talk about terrorism. And you will see that during the past couple years under Joe Biden's term, these bots maybe, and what they do is they pick up when terrorists, particularly ISIS in this case, is out having their little chats on Telegram, or they'll this Telegram bot will stop those chats. And so it went from having, let's say, less than 1,000 bot stops per month, where these bots had to stop these terrorist chats, and to go up over 25,000 per month recently. And it kind of comes in ebbs and waves. There was a peak at the end of October, a peak at the end of November, a peak on December 31st, and then it's just gone crazy since then. Now, prior to that, there were very, very little chatter on these different channels when it comes to terror attacks. Again, less than 1,000 per month they were picking up. Now it's like 25,000 per month. And here we are right now, just 6 days into January. And the number last night when I last looked was like 5 or 6,000. So we're probably going to have a record breaking month in terrorists out there chatting on these social media channels, spreading their propaganda, where these bots, of course, are stopping it, if that makes any sense to you guys. And there's a lot of things going on. Sarah Adams is somebody who had been on an interview with Sean Ryan a couple days ago. She was on the Spaces podcast again last night, talking about some of the things that she had mentioned. And one of those, of course, being the suicide vest, in which she claims that you can wear one of these, a terrorist can wear one of these suicide vests through security at an airport, and it's not picked up by X-ray. They cannot see it on an X-ray. So meaning that they could have one of these vests on loaded with explosives and no one would ever know, which is a little scary. And from what I understand, I believe that Livelsberger had talked about Iranian man pads and that type of thing. And she wanted to make it clear that that's not something that she discussed. That came from a different source. But, there's a lot going on right now with terrorism. And one of the things that I want to make sure we understand is there's different types of terrorism. For one, there's different groups. We have the Taliban, we have Al Qaeda, we have ISIS. And, to break it down, Al Qaeda and Al Nusra are the same group. What you now hear in the news as HTS, that is Al Qaeda, that is Al Nusra. They are the same people. They were funded, trained in a project called Timber Sycamore by the Obama administration. And some of that project continued under, of course, Biden. Now, Trump ended that program. He did not fund terrorism in any way, shape, or form under Donald Trump. Now we have the Taliban. The Taliban, clearly funded by the United States, created by the United States. The tunnels that bin Laden hid in, guess what? We Americans, we created those tunnels. So that's all on us. And Allison says, according to Biden, white supremacy is a bigger threat than ISIS. Well, of course, coming from the guy who's funding terrorism. Then, of course, we have ISIS. ISIS rose up in Iraq when we got rid of Saddam Hussein, and their goal is to create a caliphate. They all have different goals. Now, the Taliban has met their goal. They now run Afghanistan. They have a seat at the table, the international table. Now, Al Qaeda, who's also called Al Nusra, also called HTS, they have won their battle. They have ousted Assad, and now they have taken over in Syria, and they are running the show. They have their seat at the international table. Now we have ISIS. ISIS was under control. The reason why we're seeing a resurgence in ISIS is for a couple of different reasons. One being that, for one, they let all ISIS out of the prison. Remember when Al Qaeda took over in Syria, they ousted Assad. What did they do? They opened all the prisons. And so therefore, a lot of these really big time ISIS leaders were let go. They're out roaming free and back to making their plans for their caliphate. Now, when Trump got into the picture, he, of course, stopped funding terrorism and he started fighting ISIS, whereas Obama was supporting ISIS, funding ISIS, just like he was Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, and these other terror groups. A lot of people believe, including Trump, that Obama created ISIS. And I'm going to play a little clip of that. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'll play it now, and then we'll continue talking about it.
Is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS, okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I would say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
Of course. And who received the president Medal of Freedom last night, other than Hillary Clinton this weekend? But yes, so ISIS was founded by Obama as well. We know that Obama brought the Muslim Brotherhood into the White House. First time that ever happened. We know we funded terrorism under Obama. Trump stepped into office. He started actually, along with Russia, fighting ISIS in Syria, forced ISIS up into Turkey, up into the northeastern part of Syria, into Idlib, kept an eye on them, kept control of them. Assad, believe it or not, people don't like Assad for a lot of different reasons, mostly Western propaganda, but Assad kept them in check just as much as Saddam kept what back then was Al Qaeda, ISIS forming in Iraq, kept them in check. So well, it's a pattern here. Of course, we United States, we invent weapons of mass destruction. We go in and we killed, over 1 million Iraqis in this war over in Iraq, and of course they want retaliation for that. That's what a lot of this terrorism, of course, is about. But we got rid of Saddam. Saddam was the gatekeeper. Same with Syria. We get rid of Assad. Well, Assad was the gatekeeper. And so now these terrorists are left to run free, to do what they want, and they want revenge. And that's what we're heading into in 2025. It's revenge, and it's the establishment of the caliphate that they never got to do. So we have three different things going on. We have the Taliban. They want revenge for some of what Biden did in Afghanistan, what Trump did in Afghanistan. They, want to talk. They have been talking about taking out revenge for killing some of their leaders. We have Al Qaeda, which is Al Nusra, which is HTS, who also want revenge against not only the United States, but against our troops that fought, that killed Iraqis and that killed Syrians. So we have those groups wanting revenge against us. We have ISIS, who wants to form their caliphate. They lost out on their caliphate in Syria. Therefore, they have to find a new country to start their caliphate. And it appears to me, and from some of the things that I'm hearing, is that they want their caliphate to be here in the United States. And that poses a very serious problem. And I think the reason why they've decided they want their caliphate here in the United States is because we've been very weak under Joe Biden. We've been very weak. We're not prepared. Our military is not prepared. And, it's unfortunate. And this happened even with Obama, and it's happened with Biden, that these people, they do bite the hand that feeds them. Here we had Obama training, funding, heavily funding, arming Al Qaeda and other terror groups. And then what happens is these terror groups turn against them. It happened in Syria with Timber Sycamore. It's happened with Biden. And now it doesn't matter who's president. A lot of people want to say, well, if Biden stays president, if Democrats stay in control, all these terror attacks will go away. But that's not true. That is absolutely not true. These people want revenge. They don't care. They have no loyalty to Obama just because he funded them and trained them. They have no loyalty to him whatsoever. They have no loyalty to Biden. And they certainly don't want Trump to be our president because they know Trump will come after them. Remember when Trump dropped the big bomb, the mother of all bombs, on Afghanistan? Of course, we all remember that. They want revenge, and they're probably going to get their revenge. And there's a lot of different threats that are out there right now against Americans. And I call it the year of terror for a reason. And there's some of the threats that are out there are against airports. They've got a plan in place. They know how to target airports. They have these suicide vests now that we're told can't be seen on x-rays. That's certainly a threat. And we know they've been successful in the past, hijacking airplanes, blowing up airplanes. That is one of the threats. The other threat, of course, is various suicide missions, whether that's in your movie theaters or your grocery stores or your shopping malls, or parking lots, or, of course, big assemblies of people, whether that's a sporting event or a parade. Those are some of the other threats that are out there. They want to make sure that obviously they put fear in you, but it's more than just fear. They have a solid plan. They want revenge. And then we have ISIS stepping up, who still wants to form their caliphate. And it comes down to exactly what Colonel Joe Adams said. If you were listening to the show, I don't know if this was last week or the week before, when he said that we're going to have a battle between Christians and Muslims, and it's not against all Muslims, because most Muslims that you talk to, they're as fearful as the rest of us are. These are extremists, is what they are. They're extremists. It's not so much about Islam or Muslim. Colonel Adams might say something different, but they kill more Muslims than they kill of anyone else. So those people are fearful also. They will tell you, well, that's not Islam. Islam is not establishing a caliphate and taking out all of the people. That's not what Islam is about. But yet, at the same time, we have these Islamic extremists who are looking to come into our country and literally to kill us. I'm going to be very blunt, very straightforward, and there's really no way you can hide from it. What are you going to stay at home all the time? You're not going to go shopping. You're not going to go to the store. You're not going to drive down the highway. We have truck drivers, allegedly. There's a lot of threat out there in the semi truck driving world, where a lot of these people have come into positions in as truck drivers, and that's a huge vehicle, of course, that could be a serious destruction of others. And a lot of these people, they say, are being radicalized online. That's a big problem too. We know with Jabbar, who of course was the New Orleans bomber, he had visited Cairo, Egypt. He had traveled to, I can't recall, another country, Canada, somewhere in Canada, to this area that was also fairly radicalized, another mosque. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be people who are radicalized online. And we have to find out, as a country and as a president, Donald Trump, we have to find ways to stop it in its tracks, to go online, to stop the chatter, to stop the online radicalization. That's a number one factor. And it's going to be tough to combat. It's really going to be tough to combat. And I know military installations have reported, I've got a little list here, 100% ID checks. If you're entering an Air Force base, military base, any type of military type situation, training, et cetera, that's taking place across our country, they're going to 100% check IDs. There are random inspections. They are suspending a program called Trusted Traveler Program, and they're taking no chances, because military bases are probably, from what I understand, number 2 on the terror target list, which of course should be no surprise, as well as our embassies across the world under terrorist threat right now. Those are some things to think about. And sorry, like I said, I have notes all over the place here about different things I wanted to go over when it came to terrorism. And movie theaters, schools, where are we most vulnerable at? Well, I can guarantee you, if we're vulnerable in a certain area, they know how to get us, and they know our children come first. Schools, what are we going to do? Are we going to hand all of our teachers weapons and train all of our teachers how to use weapons? I hope so. We should have been doing that already. But in general, how do you protect yourself? That's the big question. And let's see, Joe Fry, the guitar guy, says, I think these people were allowed into the country as part of the plan to destroy this economy country. Then they remove our constitution and we get to start over. Most of our military age men. That is true. Of course, Mayorkas, they want to tell us, oh, it has nothing to do with people crossing our border because Jabbar was born and raised in the United States. Okay, well, that's one example. That's just one example. We already know ISIS is on our southern border. I can guarantee you they are in our country. They are training the cartels, because you know what's going to happen when this war really starts? And it is going to be a war between us against Islamic extremisms, not against Muslims, not against Islam, but against Islamic extremists. ISIS is already on the southern border training the cartels. We're going to be fighting the cartels. We're going to be fighting ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Taliban. They're all coming for us. And, it's sad to say, I think we had it coming for a long time. Our terror around the world is coming back to bite us. And I don't know what we can do to stop it other than being prepared. I'm not telling you don't go out and fly on an airplane, don't go to the grocery store, don't send your kids to school. We can't hide at home in fear, but you do have to be aware that these threats are out there. And I know that our police departments, of course, airport security, our military installations are all being heavily warned about potential terror attacks. But as Colonel Joe Adams said on the show, I think that was just last week, most local police departments are not trained. They're not geared to fight terrorism. They're, as a matter of fact, these days they're so inundated with crimes, the only thing they can do is pick up the pieces after the crime has already happened. It's not much of a deterrent these days because people in our justice system just doesn't matter. Things are just out of control. So Jay Van Brown says, I own my own semi truck, and I think about that a lot. What is really out there on the road. And if you have your own semi truck and you're a truck driver, then Jay Van Brown, you probably know what's out there on the road. And it's unfortunate. You have to think, all these people that have come across our border, where are they working right now? Where are they living? Where are they at? What industries have they taken over in? And I'll tell you what, this plan, maybe coming into fruition now, but it's been a long time in the making. And what they're saying is this is a revenge on the United States for our 20-year attack war on terrorism. Now it's all coming into fruition. I'm going to tell you right now where these people have taken jobs at food processing plants. We see all these fires, we see all the contamination and all the recalls. A lot of these people are working in our food processing plants. They're working, a lot of them on our farms, a lot of contact with our food. Think about that, with our food supply. That's a really scary thought. That's why I said earlier in the beginning of the show, terrorism is not necessarily somebody in a suicide vest standing in the middle of a crowded shopping mall or sporting venue. It can be weather modification. Believe it or not, these terrorists, they're not like they're living in a third world country. These people are heavily funded, much so by our own country. They are heavily funded. What do we give the Taliban? Like $83 million last year. Another, what was it, 60 something million dollars this year. They are heavily funded. And look at over in Syria, HTS, which is also Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, heavily funded. ISIS, millions of dollars. Well, I should say billions of dollars. ISIS has billions of dollars. These terror groups are heavily funded. They can do anything they want to do. They have weapons. The weapons that we send over to Ukraine, guess what? They're being sold on the black market or directly to terrorists. So they have weapons. They have dirty bombs. They have air to surface missiles. They have heat-seeking missiles. They have all of these different things that you might not even realize they have. And they are taking these weapons, they're coming across our southern border. And I can guarantee you, and no one has told me this, but I can guarantee you, just based on my own judgment, they are in every city. They are in every city, even probably some of your smaller rural, communities. They've had many years to be prepared, and they are prepared. And now they're planning to carry out their attacks. And I can see, like I said, I can see the difference between a year ago and now. And we hear about all the chatter, we hear about all of the threats. I think these threats are very serious. I think we're going to see a lot of terror attacks. I don't know where they're going to play out. I think in a lot of different scenarios, but we have to remember, don't think of it as the suicide bomber standing in the middle of the grocery store. It can be weather manipulation. It can be drones. It can be a lot of different things. It can be biological weapons. It's not something you can fight. There's nothing you can do. You can't just stay home and hope nothing happens. We have to go out and we have to live our lives. But I think that we have to take some precautions. And there's a lot of things you yourself can do to take these precautions. And one of those things you can do, and what I suggest doing, is take it upon yourself to start your own community group. Take it upon yourself. Go out, start a Facebook page, start an X page, go out and talk to people, go to your council meetings, go out and start a community watch or some type of community terror alert system. And I'm going to do that in my own community because no one else is. And you know what? We all have to take it upon ourselves to step up to the plate. And it's kind of a see something, say something. Make sure people are in your community are aware of what the threats are. They might think you're crazy, and that's okay. But make sure that people understand, A, that there is a threat, B, what type of threat they can expect. Do your research. Look, it's pretty easy to go out and research and see what type of threats we face these days. And it's a lot more than somebody, shooting up a grocery store or walking into a sporting event again, with some type of vest on. There's a lot of different things we have to look at. We have to look at lone wolf attacks, school attacks, again, biological weapons. Some of these things we're seeing right now, crazy fogs. drones all over the place. Could this be terror related? It could be, because I'll tell you what, if you combine the Taliban, ISIS, and Al Qaeda together, that's more money than our government has, quite honestly. People, I don't think, understand it that way, but they have billions of dollars and they're not tied up in debt. They have billions of dollars in cash and weapons to do nothing but use them against us. Jeanette says too many people live in ignorance. Don't want to believe that this is actually happening. And I'm sure there are people watching me talking about this right now who think I'm absolutely batty crazy. And but the problem is that it's happening. It's true. We are facing a very serious threat right now with terrorism, and that threat can be at your own home. It can be anywhere you go. You can't hide from it. The only thing you can do is be prepared. Sandy says you can't even get people to talk about it. You can't get people to talk about it. You know why? People are scared to talk about it. For one, they don't want to accept it. They're scared to talk about it because they don't want to be a target. They don't want people to think they're crazy. But we have to do something. We have to take it upon ourselves. J. Van Brown says, I'm concerned what might be in my blood pressure meds. I'm sure they come from China. I agree with you. I agree with you completely. It's a shame that we in the United States were not more self sufficient, that we have to worry about these things. I'll tell you what, I am terrified right now to eat processed food or to eat a lot of the things at the grocery store. I made a huge mistake. I ordered some tea online. And then I thought, my gosh, why did I do that? Now I can't drink the tea because I don't know who this came from. I don't know what hands it passed through. How do I know they didn't do something to the tea between it getting from its destination to me? We don't know who. And I know I probably sound paranoid and crazy, but those are some of the things I think we have to start feeling and being to protect ourselves and our family. Our country is not self-sufficient. We rely on China, of course, for most of our very important medications, for our surgical equipment, for our lab equipment. We don't know what they're doing and how that stuff is being infiltrated. We really just have no idea. And let's see, Allison says, if you're prepared, you live with less fear. And that's exactly what it comes down to, is being prepared so that you can be a little bit more at ease. Colonel Adams says, Donald Trump Jr. said that this country needs another 1,000 Washington guards. They do. And that's where you come into, safety in numbers and the reason why, we can't all be part of the Washington Guard with Colonel Adams, because I don't live in Franklin County. It's, 2.5 hours drive from where I'm at standing right now. And we have, of course, listeners to show all over the country. But one thing that you can do is you can take it upon yourself to be a watch guard. I'm not saying you have to go out and start your own militia. That's a big undertaking that not everyone can do. But you can start your own community watch group, similar to your, you'll see the signs that say, oh, we have a community watch program here, blah, blah, blah. But, create something in your own community. Go out and talk to people. Go to your council meetings. Set up Facebook groups or social media groups. And especially tell people, if you see something, say something. That's the most important, because there's going to be a lot of people seeing things that look suspicious. And they're going to tell themselves, hey, that looks really odd to me. This truck looks like it is out of place. Or this person looks like they're watching me, or they're watching other people, or whatever the scenario may be. And you're going to discount that. You're going to say, oh, well, that's just my imagination running wild. There's really nothing going on. I'm not going to call anyone or tell anyone because I'll look crazy, or I'm probably wrong. They're probably just not doing anything. They're probably parked there because they're on their phone. You can't feel that way. You have to say something. You have to call someone. You have to tell people. And even if authorities don't listen to you, you can at least warn people in your community. You have to do whatever you have to do, because the biggest threat that terrorists face is us communicating with each other, us being aware of what's going on around us. That is literally the biggest threat, because obviously if they want to attack a school and our teachers are armed, that's going to make an attack a lot less deadly. They might want to attack us at a stadium. Well, if we're all aware of it, if we're all looking and seeing something and, turning tips in and making sure we stop the attack before it happens, then obviously they're a lot less effective. But I'll tell you what, I don't want the United States to become the next ISIS caliphate. I don't think you do either. And I think we have a tough battle ahead of us. And again, I can't wait to talk to Colonel Adams about his thoughts on this. And I think I already know what his thoughts are, but these are some of the real threats that we're seeing, out there right now. And I don't think they're idle threats. I don't think it's just chatter. I think that the world has become tired of us, the United States, and the Democrat regime that has run this country. And we have over. Well, I looked at the figures the other day. It was nearly 2 million people killed in Iraq during the years that we, the United States, had our troops there. Syrians, lots of Syrians killed. They want revenge on us. And I believe that they're going to do their best to carry that revenge out. And I think we're going to be fighting terrorists on three fronts. We have the Taliban, we have ISIS, and we have Al Qaeda, which is again now called HTS. And even though, which is crazy to me, we helped Al Qaeda win in Syria and oust Assad, they bite the hand that feeds them. They don't care that we trained them, that we armed them, that the Democrat regime has supported them. They don't care. They hate us. We are still the enemy. And now they have decided that retribution, revenge is the plan. And we've got to do what we can. And we'll talk about that more, in future shows. But those are some of the things that I think we in the immediate need to know and need to do is make sure you're armed, make sure you know how to use your weapon, make sure you have a security system in place. If you can put up cameras, you can get some very inexpensive cameras now on Amazon or some of these other stores. Be very careful with your food, quite honestly. Make sure you inspect what you eat. Make sure your packages don't look like they've been tampered with. I am personally not going to eat any fresh food that I see that anybody could tamper with. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm so paranoid right now about the food system and the processing that goes into the food. And I know Colonel Adams will, I don't know how much he'll agree with me on this, but I think we know that they've certainly infiltrated our processing plants and facilities. And not to say that all the people who work there are bad, but we know there's some bad apples out there who do make sure that they get into the right places. And again, what I wanted to go back and talk about this is the weather manipulation. If a country, let's just say the Taliban, they run Afghanistan. Okay, they have billions of dollars. They're not in debt by $36 trillion, like, hitting their debt ceiling like we are here in the United States. They're funded, they have weapons, they're ready, they have money, they have plenty of ways to get to us. And don't think that they don't have ways or can't come up with ways to modify our weather, to hurt us economically. There's a lot of different things they can do to use biological weapons against us. The funniest thing I hear is when people say, oh, they're so poor. Terrorists, they're just living in third world countries. They don't have technology, they don't have knowledge, they don't have training. Well, that's wrong. It's very wrong. And some of the things that I've been hearing lately is some of these soldiers, basically terrorist soldiers, Islamic soldiers, they're more well trained than some of our own military is. So don't think it can't happen. And Jeanette says, I don't know if you've addressed this. Wasn't there a connection to the Louisiana bomber and Cybertruck guy connected to Fort Bragg? This doesn't boil down to community members. These people are already trained by our own military. And that's true. And there was a connection between them. They allegedly, Jabbar from New Orleans and Livelsberger from Las Vegas did both serve at Fort Bragg. Now that's not together at different time frames. But I also heard that they also served in Afghanistan and may have known each other in Afghanistan. But then other people say that's not true. So I don't know what the real answer is or if there's a connection between them or not. To me, it seems logical that there would be, but no one can seem to make a connection. Even some of the people who are really trying hard to make that connection can't seem to do it. But there's a lot of things to go, taking place right now in our country. I'm going to call it the 2025, war of terror for us here in the United States. And man, more than ever, we got to keep our heads on a swivel. I say that a lot. I worry about, of course, some of the crime in our own country. And now we have to worry about ISIS wanting to make us their next caliphate. And I think we know that they're brutal. There is no extreme that they won't go. They don't care about their own lives. They certainly don't care about our lives. And we're dealing with a different type of ideology that we're not used to. It's not the same thing as a gang on the streets or drug dealers or even the cartel that we've dealt with. Terrorism is a whole different ballgame. So we've really got to start talking about it and coming up with ways to protect ourselves, our families, our communities. And again, I want to reiterate, I know we can't all start a militia like Washington Guard, it's a big undertaking and it's overwhelming to even think about, quite honestly. But we all can do what we have to in our communities, and that's what we have to do. I myself, I'm going to start a social media group in my own community. I am going to make sure I talk to people. I don't care if they think I'm crazy. I don't even care, because soon enough we'll be validated. When these terror attacks begin, you're going to be validated and they are going to happen. So, you've got to do your best to alleviate as much as you can. It's hard to even talk about. I feel like a crazy person standing here talking about this, even though I know it's true and I know that these things are going to start unfolding. Of course, under Trump's watch, hopefully he'll put a great plan in place. We'll have a little bit more to talk about. But until then, things are going to be a little crazy. Thankfully, certification today, inauguration on the 20th. Will it happen? Will they come up with some other plan? I don't know. I think everything seems like it's moving on target, but we'll see how it all unfolds. I'm going to talk more about some of this in the future. Let's see. Mr. Parnot says, stop focusing on the noise and focus on preparing yourself and family with food security and training. Absolutely correct. Colonel Adams says no connection. And Colonel Adams, I'm not sure what you mean. No connection between Jabbar and Livelsberger. It doesn't appear that there is a connection. There's a lot of people out there trying to make a connection, and these people are people who knew Livelsberger, and they don't seem to think there is any connection whatsoever. And you're absolutely correct, Mr. Parnot. Stop focusing on the noise, focus on preparing yourself and your family food security training. I couldn't have said it better myself. Here we are in January. A lot of us are starting to get our gardens, figured out. I'm already talking about getting my winter sowing going. I'm going to do that with some baggies I watched a video on. You can do the same thing. Make sure that you have a plan in place for your family. Now more than ever, make sure that you have a plan. We're going to be talking to different people on this show, as the show progresses, in the coming days and weeks. We're going to talk about preparedness and what you can do at home and gardening and, preparing your own food. I don't trust the food system right now any more than I trust the medical system or that I trust the government or anything else. You can only trust yourself and your family, and you have to really rely on that. But if I were you, I would be getting some security cameras set up. You can buy some good cameras as cheap as $30. I would keep an eye on your neighborhood, the perimeter of your home. If you go somewhere where you're around a public setting, really look around and don't think it's coming. It's already here. It's not coming. It's not like, oh, well, I have until May to prepare. No, you have today. You have today to prepare. And so get ready. And if you see something, say something. And Peggy says, I've ordered my tomato plants. And Peggy, I still have some from last year, but I'm going to be ordering some new ones. Sandy says, General Flynn put out a video praising social media warriors and getting the voices out there for truth. I didn't see that, Sandy, but I'm going to take a look for that. Of course, General Flynn being just a fantastic person and great person for us to have on our team. And we have to work together. We can't do it alone. We have to work together. Before I switch gears, I'm going to talk about those Medal of Freedoms, the Presidential Medal of Freedom honorees before we head out, of course, for the day. But I want to stress that we're going to talk more about terrorism and that we're going to talk to some different folks about preparation and what you can do to prepare at home and ways you can safeguard your own home. And I'm going to say start with security systems, security cameras. If you can afford those, make sure at least you have your own perimeter of your home secured. And we're going to think about what happens in some other countries and how these Islamic extremists take over. There's a lot of different things that are happening. It's probably going to start happening overseas first with them attacking our military bases. That's probably going to be the first wave. The second wave is probably going to be multiple attacks here in our own country. And that can be anything from individual attacks to group attacks. And I'm not kidding you. I don't think it's going to be pretty. So start preparing for that. But in the meantime, I am going to switch gears. We'll get back to all of that on other shows. I want to switch gears because I don't think we can end a show without talking about the fact that Biden, the big guy, Pedo Peter, I still can't even believe I'm even saying this. It's even true. I feel like I live in an alternate world that he has awarded George Soros and Hillary Clinton with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And you know what really I hate about this more than the obvious is that Now the Presidential Medal of Freedom means absolutely nothing to anyone anymore. Now that we know that this is what happened. And, yes, Donald Trump can rescind it, just so you know. When Donald Trump takes office, he can rescind a Presidential Medal of Freedom. So that's good to know. I'm going to show you these quick videos here of of these award recipients. And by the way, before I do that, there's quite a few people who actually ended up getting an award, a medal, if I can talk right, Medal of Freedom Award. Some of those are Bono, of course, diehard Democrat, actor Michael J. Fox, actor Denzel Washington, Chef Jose Andres, Bill Nye the Science Guy, who absolutely knows nothing about science, Lionel Messi of Argentina, Irvin Magic Johnson, Vogue editor Anna Wintour, fashion designer Ralph Lauren, American Film Institute founder George Stevens Durand. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. David Rubenstein, no idea who that is. Fannie Lou Himmer, no idea who that is. And posthumously, former Defense Secretary Ash Carter, Fannie Lou Hamer, Robert F. Kennedy, and George Romney. And so these were the total recipients. And of course, Hillary Clinton and George Soros. And we're going to look at those videos. And this is just crazy. Take a look at this here.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to George Soros. Born into a Jewish family in Hungary, George Soros escaped Nazi occupation to build a life of freedom for himself and countless others around the world. Educated in England, he settled in America as he became an investor and philanthropist, supporting key pillars of open societies: rights and justice, equity and equality, freedom now and in the future. His inspiring generosity reminds us all of our capacity and our obligation to stand up to the abuse of power and to be guardians of democracy and all people yearning to be free.
All right, I can't watch any more of that. Alex Soros accepting the award for his father, George Soros, receiving the Presidential Medal of Honor, and one of the highest honors a person can receive, in our country, a civilian can receive. And it's pretty sad that this has happened. We know Joe Biden's not making any decisions, but they're throwing it in our face. They're throwing it in our face. We know what George Soros has done to this country and to us as Americans, and not just us, but people all over the world. And Russia has a target on his head, by the way, dead or alive, if that tells you anything. But here in our country, we give them the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And that's just a big slap in the face to all of us, isn't it? It just validates what we always thought. It's probably a big joke to them. They probably laughed about it and said, we'll show them. We don't care that they know what George Soros has done to the American people or to our country. We're going to give them a Medal of Freedom for doing it. That's how they feel. And then Hillary Clinton, I'm less upset about this, but still upset about it. Now, why would Hillary Clinton get the Presidential Medal of Freedom? Last I remember, her and Bill Clinton raised a bunch of money for Haitians and decided to keep it all. Remember that? What has she done to deserve a Medal of Freedom? As a matter of fact, what have a lot of these people done? And yes, Jay Van Brown, it was Bono of U2. And good morning, Glesna. It is absolutely insane. It is insane. Why are we giving George Soros and Hillary Clinton the Presidential Medal of Freedom? It makes no sense to me. Neither of these people have done anything but destroy us and destroy our country and plan to do more of that. They plan to do more. They're just getting started. We're talking about a very serious conversation about heading into, a war of terror right here in our own country. There are 3 different groups of terrorists wanting to come into our country and harm us. And who is it that paid for these terrorists? Who trained these terrorists? Who gave them the money? None other than George Soros, Hillary Clinton, Obama. These are the people, Joe Biden, these are the people who are perpetuating this war on us. It's a different kind of war, but they have been making war against their own people for how long now? Gosh, as far back as I can remember. As far back as I can remember. And that's why I really worry, and it's a different topic for another day about Trump coming into office. I do think the certification will go as planned. Today, I do think the inauguration will go as planned, but I don't think they're going to go down as easily as what we expect. And quite honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they weren't behind this war of terror, on the United States. It wouldn't surprise me at all. If you told me right now that Obama, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Joe Biden, and the rest of the Biden crime clan, if they were all behind it, if they all planned it, because Donald Trump, of course, becoming our president, because we ousted the Democrat regime, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because I see them as one and the same. I see the Democrat regime and these terror groups being one and the same, part of the same group, because they funded them, they trained them. And you can go back and listen to Obama say it. He called them moderate terrorists when he was talking about Al Qaeda. They're not moderate terrorists. Terrorism is terrorism, and they're coming for us. And we don't even think that there's a separation between the Democrat regime and the terrorists who are coming for us in 2025, because they are one in the same, one in the same. And I will guarantee you that if Trump had not won this election, we wouldn't be going through this situation right now. We wouldn't. And when I was talking earlier in the show, you can go on if you're on Telegram, go on Telegram, look for a group called gosh, isn't that funny? Now I don't remember what it's called. I'm going to look, because I just looked at it earlier today. And it's called ISIS Watch. Go on Telegram and look for a group called ISIS Watch. And when you do, you'll see that the chatter, the bots, the terrorism bots kicked up after the election, right about that time. So, they're all in the stage of planning. Don't think that they're not all part of it. So they're not going to sit idly back. We keep watching Democrats thinking, no, they're being so passive. They're just talking about how peacefully everything's going to be transitioned over. Oh, but yet we're going to have a war on terror here in our own country. Come on now. One and the same, mark my words, one and the same. Don't think it's different. We'll talk more about that on another show. I am way, way over my time limit today, but some important things we had to talk about. I hope I covered everything I planned to talk about. And Sandy says, wasn't he linked to the funding of riots in BLM? Yes, Sandy. As a matter of fact, when you hear about how these groups would bring out pallets of hammers, pallets of umbrellas at one point, pallets of bricks and rocks, these were all funded allegedly by Soros. And he admitted to a lot of these things and I can't remember his exact words, but he said, oh, yeah, of course I did. Why wouldn't I? It's all part of the battle plan. And I'll have to go back and look at his exact words, but he pretty much admitted to being behind these things. And of course, our own Kamala Harris was a big part of fundraising for cash bails for the people who use those pallets of bricks and Molotov cocktails against our law enforcement and against our civilians. So all part of the same people. Well, that's about it for me today. I could talk forever about this. Jay Van Brown says, I thought Bono was supposed to be a Christian. How could he even think about being a Democrat? Bono, I don't know a lot about him. I'm not a big YouTube fan, but he has been very outspoken against conservatives. He's very much as far left as it gets. And outside of that, though, that's about all I have to talk about today. We've got a lot more to talk about again in the coming shows. Tomorrow morning, if my work is not canceled, I will not have a show tomorrow morning. I will try to do one in the afternoon. We'll let you guys know when that will come about. I'm going to talk to Colonel Adams. He would normally be with us on Wednesday, but I've been called into work on Wednesday, and I will not even have one single minute during the day to have any type of show. I'll be gone from 6 a.m. till about midnight. Thursday, also, I've been called into work, so I probably will not have a show in the morning on Thursday. And again, we'll probably do one in the afternoon, and we'll figure that out. Friday, everything should go on time unless something changes with my schedule. Again, I work in anti-piracy, and I own a small business security company. And so when duty calls, I have to go. There's not a lot I can do about it. Can't find anyone. Of course, when you're self-employed and you work in anti-piracy, you just have to go out and do the work yourself. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'll let you guys know what's going on with the shows. We definitely want to talk to Colonel Adams about his input on the terrorism that's coming our way. I already know what he's going to say, most of it anyway, but he might surprise us with some, of course, a lot of extra information. Can't wait to talk to him. I'll keep you guys informed. I hope you guys all have a great day. Stay safe, stay warm, stay out of the crazy snowy streets if you can. If you have to get out today, please be careful. Please be very careful. I know you probably trust yourself, but you can't always trust the other folks on the road. We all know who they are, driving way too fast for weather conditions. So please be careful out there. If you've lost power, be sure to make sure. I think you can dial 211 in most areas to try to get some resources. There's a lot of information out there about warming centers and places you can go to make sure you have a little bit of heat. There's even, if you call Ameren, I think if you have medical conditions or on hospice, they will bring out a generator to you. So if you're one of those people, and of course, if you don't have power, you're probably not watching the show. But if you know people who have lost power, make sure that you reach out and provide them some assistance. Anyway, hope you guys have a great day. I will look forward to seeing you all at some point tomorrow, whether it's in the morning or later afternoon. I will keep everybody updated. Thank you again for joining me and for your support. I'm Tabitha with Tabs on Tap. If you like the show, please do share, as we do have to spread the truth faster than they can spread the lies, and they're getting quicker all the time. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a really